Yeah, so I think there's lots of different ways you could describe it. The way I define it is a little broader. I say Christian nationalism is the worship of power, whether it's social power, economic power, political power, in the name of Christ. And I think it's relevant to describe it this way because it's something we've struggled with within the Christian church from the very beginning. So the first followers of Jesus didn't even call themselves Christians. They called themselves the Way because their crucified teacher had taught them a different way of being human, a different way of relating to other people, of understanding your relationship to neighbor and to God. And this transformed them. They became these peculiar people, is how the Bible describes it, because they didn't participate in the economy, the military, the culture. They were persecuted because they turned the world upside down. Again, that's how it's described in Acts. But 300 years after that, after the Roman Empire crucified Jesus, Emperor Constantine made Christianity the official religion of that very same empire, the same empire that crucified Jesus. So this is 300 years later, and now Christianity is the official sponsor of the empire, of Western civilization.
Do you think Constantine was a Christian, like legitimately, or do you think that he was using it?
It's always hard to tell with politicians, and I say this as a politician myself.
When was Constantine baptized?
Well, he was baptized, I don't know the year, but he was baptized after he had this vision before a decisive battle, when he saw the cross and decided that his soldiers would put the cross as part of their emblem, and then they won that battle, right? Which, who knows if it was because of his vision or not. But it started a trend which we've struggled with for literally, more than 1,500 years, of powerful people, emperors, billionaires, dictators, megachurch pastors, using religion to protect their own wealth and power.
Yeah.
And to me, Christian nationalism is just the latest iteration of that, whether it's the Ten Commandments bill, whether it's the bill, I don't know if you read about this, a bill that we passed that allows schools to replace school counselors with untrained, unsupervised religious chaplains. Sometimes people who go online and become a chaplain within 5 minutes. That to me, again, is an example of Christian nationalism. It's using the state, it's using political power to elevate one religious tradition over all the others. It's using governmental power to dominate our neighbors instead of loving them as ourselves, which is exactly what we're called to do as Christians. And then, of course, most recently we saw this bill that defunded public schools here in Texas to subsidize private Christian schools. And to me, again, that is a bill that's right in the middle of this Christian nationalist movement to erode the separation of church and state and force a certain interpretation of Christianity on everybody against their wills.
Yeah, there's this narrative that this is a Christian nation. This is
Sure.
It was founded as a Christian nation, and I think they call upon that.
Yeah.
When they're making these decisions and talking about it in this very particular way.
No, for sure.
How so? Because
they spend so much time. Let's talk about the two billionaires that I think basically control state government here in Texas. And I don't know if you or even your listeners necessarily know about them. It's two billionaires from West Texas. Their names are Tim Dunn and Ferris Wilks, Dunn and Wilks. They made their money in oil and gas.
Country music band.
I was just going to say, some people get them confused with Brooks and Dunn. Wilks and Dunn is the bad one. Brooks and Dunn, good one. But they made their money in oil and gas, but they are also Christian nationalist pastors.
Oh.
Which, billionaire pastor, you would think that's an oxymoron, but on Sunday mornings, these two billionaires, they preach at these far-right churches, and they've got very extreme views. They don't think anybody who's not a Christian should serve an elected office.
Whoa.
In fact, you can look this up. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research. But they told the former Republican Speaker of the Texas House, a guy named Joe Strauss from San Antonio, that he didn't have a right to be Speaker because he's Jewish, and that's a Republican. So they are dominionists. They're Christian nationalists. This is the world that they have, but they basically Every single Republican state senator in Texas has taken their money. Every single one. A majority of the Republicans in the state house have taken their money. And for some of those lawmakers, a majority of their total campaign contributions come from just these two guys. Like they increasingly run this whole government here in Texas. And you ask where the Ten Commandments bill comes from. You ask where that school counselor chaplain bill comes from, the voucher bill, the abortion ban. A lot of this is driven by these two billionaires.
That's wild.
And they give to politicians, but it's actually much bigger than that, because they have this sprawling network of think tanks, advocacy organizations, media outlets, the Daily Wire, right, funded by them. So like they are creating an empire to control every aspect of this state. I mean, I don't mean to sound alarmist, but that's what's happening. And again, your listeners should do their own research on this to learn about it. But there's been a lot of stories about these two billionaires and their control over state government. And I say this because...
But a big part of the Daily Wire is Ben Shapiro, and Ben Shapiro's very Jewish.
Well, and these two billionaires hosted a meeting with Nick Fuentes, who is a Holocaust denier, and
he's
got a lot of pushback.
Denier?
Nick Fuentes?
He's a denier,
yes.
Or does he debate the numbers?
Well, to be fair, I don't listen to a lot of Nick Fuentes, which is on me. But
who funds it? Duo serves. Yep. Dan and Ferris Wilkes. Daily Wire was launched in 2015. Billionaire Petroleum Industry Brothers.
And again, I think the important part about these two guys, it's maybe more important than the oil and gas stuff, is that they have this extreme religious worldview, and they have the money to be able to actually implement that worldview on 30 million people in the state of Texas. And now they're trying to go national by trying to win a U.S. Senate seat. So, I mean, if your listeners haven't heard of Tim Dunn and Ferris Wilkes, they need to. One, because not only do they make policy increasingly for 30 million Texans, but now they're trying to go national. And a lot of their views and a lot of their politics are going to become nationalized.
Yeah, I interrupted you when you were talking about Nick Fuentes. So
my point was that Dunn and Wilkes, and I've probably become the most outspoken critic of these guys, because I do think people need to know their names, right? You open up your social media feed, you listen to the news, and you hear about Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick, or even James Tallarico, but you don't actually hear about the two guys who run the whole thing. So, but my point is that they spend so much of their energy and their money and their time trying to create wedges between people. So let's just take schools, for instance. The centerpiece of their agenda was this school voucher bill, which you probably heard about, which is basically taking money that would go to neighborhood public schools and sending that money to religious private schools. Those who are around Dunn and Wilkes say that their ultimate vision is to replace public schooling with religious schooling for everyone. That's what they're trying to get to. Yes.
Wow.
And so, but they know that Texans love their public schools, right? Like, I mean, public education is enshrined in our state's constitution. Friday night lights in a lot of these small towns. The school is not just an academic institution; it is the community hub that brings people together. So, if Dunn and Wilkes want to get rid of public education, which I think they do, and I think the journalism bears this out, they've got to drive a wedge between people in their public school community